So I took the 3 big kids to vote early with me, and Ellery had a little notepad, and I'm like,
of course she did.
She's taking notes, and I look at it after, and she says, long line, civic duty though, it's like the
Leaders from Asheville and Buncombe County.
From the newsroom to the nursery.
We're juggling a demanding career on live TV with the demands of motherhood.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Karen.
They are AnchorMoms.
Hi, everyone. Welcome into another episode of AnchorMoms, the podcast. Glad you're with us. Katie, how are we doing? How are we feeling?
We're feeling okay. Are you asking me as like an individual or collective Asheville, Western North Carolina?
As Asheville. Well, first let's start with personal because you've had some updates on your house, right?
Yes. I just posted this to my a reel on Instagram. So Brian and I spent all weekend doing some cleanup at our house. So a tree fell on our house during Helene and destroyed sort of, for sure, our kitchen and then sort of like the back half of our house. Big old hole in the back of the house. So Brian has hatched this plan. So right now we're living, our house is in North Asheville. Right now we are living in South Asheville. And the problem with that is, despite, the problem with that is, aside from the fact that we're not living in our house, is that River goes to school on the opposite end of town from our rental house. So it's been very, It's been a lot. It's been a little bit of a challenge because there's traffic. It requires an interstate. So my husband hatched this plan that mayhap we can move back into the house sans kitchen. And the way we do that is wall off the damage with this big plywood wall. Because of course it's just a tarp covering that half of the house. So it's about to be winter. We needed to wall it off. And then maybe we make a makeshift kitchen. Did I say all of this already? Have I said all of this on the podcast? I feel like I tell this story. Everywhere you go, people are like, what's happening with your house? So I'm having sort of deja vu. If you're a listener and you've already heard this story 1,000 times, I apologize. Anyway, maybe we make a makeshift kitchen. So the idea is to get in there. Let's get things cleaned up. I mean, if you've ever gone through a renovation, there was an inch of construction dust. Anything that was salvageable from our kitchen was in our dining room and our living room. It's a mess. It was a mess. So this weekend, we actually made really good progress. We were able to demo the rest of stuff, some of the stuff in the kitchen, threw it out onto the lawn. And I don't know. The makeshift kitchen has not happened yet because it requires a plumber and an electrician. That's where we are. It's really no update, right?
But you're getting closer to moving back into your real house.
Yes. I think the question, which sort of brings us to the second update, is that people living in Asheville and Buncombe County still don't have drinkable water, which, is bothersome to everybody. I think the question for Brian and I is do we want to live in a makeshift house where we only have to boil water. We can't, where we have to boil water. We only have a utility sink. A lot of people are sanitizing their dishes through their dishwasher. We won't have a dishwasher. It's just kind of is it possible? Yes. Do we want to commit to that? I don't know. We were talking right before we hit record. The latest update, and honest to God, it does change really on a daily basis. The latest update is that they are saying that Asheville will not have drinkable water until the middle of December, which is
a long time.
I know. I'm so appreciative of how hard everybody, the folks here in Western North Carolina are working. I'm sure I don't understand all of the mechanics of it, but at the same time, when I saw that update saying the middle of December, I did have oh my gosh, damn it.
Same.
Yeah.
I said that to Gregory and he was like, oh yeah, that seems right. I was expecting that. And I was like, oh, wow, I was being much more optimistic. I was maybe being foolish in my sense of when this would happen.
Right.
Yeah. It's just so interesting because some things are, Henry had a soccer game this weekend. Ballet is back on. The Nutcracker's happening. School is back. Some parts of your life feel normal-ish, but then we don't have water and, there's other parts that are still you're hits you in the face that no, we're still in the midst of this recovery and this is going to be a long time. If you drive into one of the areas that was really hard hit, it's still absolutely
Devastated.
it's
Yeah.
it's terrible.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's like we're making progress. Things are getting better, but I think it's also just the realization that this is going. I mean, some of these agencies and nonprofits and volunteers that are here are saying we'll be here through March. We'll be here through all of 2025. And when places say that, you're like, oh wow, yeah, okay. If these organizations who are familiar with disaster recovery are already realizing that it's going to be 6 months to a year more until we're back up and running fully, then that's, this is going to be a long haul.
One of the nonprofits that's been like cooking meals at our church. Our church is kind of centrally located, so a lot of folks will go that way for like their meals. Yeah, I saw them at the trunk or treat at our church, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're going to be here for a year."
Yeah.
And I mean, I say this over and over again. I just had no idea what it was to go through a natural disaster. Like you see this stuff on the news and it makes news for like, I don't know, a week at best. And then you just move on with your life and you assume that they're moving on with their life. It's hard. It is. I mean, it is hard to be here and move on with your life.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't have damage, even if you weren't impacted in some huge way. There's like literally no way to escape it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
But progress. I will say this. I do think people have been posting pictures on social media. The water is getting clearer.
Mm-hmm.
I even feel a little bit more positive just knowing that I vacuumed areas in my house this weekend, like areas that had not been cleaned since September. It's November,
Yeah.
So I will say this. This is my husband's favorite saying. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Like it literally, you just have to take it step by step, day by day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our first article actually comes from, hold on a second. I spilled
USA
water.
Today.
Yeah, I spilled some water. You're watching.
Mm-hmm.
On YouTube, I spilled some water on my notes. I'm like a hot mess, and so I had to. So I'm adjusting
some non-potable
here.
water on your notes.
I spilled some non-potable water on my notes. So I'm adjusting here. Yes, from USA Today, and honestly, this is a local writer who lives here in Asheville, and he sort of speaks to just what we were saying. This is an opinion piece, and the title is, "Despite Helene's destruction, Asheville is still where I want to raise my kids. My family's losses were far from the worst, but the storm did take things from us, and it also gave us things." So he just talks about, when those first couple of days after the storm, it's like everybody was just kind of basically like trying to stay afloat, literally in some cases. But, you were just trying to bail water out of your basement, assess the damage, make sure your friends and family were okay. But then it sort of afterwards, and even now, like you sort of just realize, he talks about how he sees in the faces of his kids, just the sort of the realization that things are never going to be the same here in Western North Carolina. And he writes like, they were like, but we wanted to stay the same. And he says, I didn't know what to tell them except that things were going to change. And I was sad too. And I also told them that we were lucky, blessed even, to have gotten through it as well as we did. And he talks about going through Asheville and Western North Carolina and sort of ticking off the places that no longer exist or that are so badly damaged. We have those places too. And in fact, some of the places that he names, I'm like, yeah, like the taco place down by the river that we would go every summer, like every Saturday in the summer after the pool, White Duck Taco, gone. The used sporting goods store that I would take my stuff to be consigned, gone. Our daughter's gymnastics place, gone. We were just talking about, we're getting some emails from them about their recovery. So, But, the thing is that he mentions that it gave to them is just that sense of community, knowing your neighbors a little bit better, just that general feeling of resiliency that I think if you live here, you can't escape that. I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah. I guess it was the fourth day maybe after the storm when we realized we needed to leave because, obviously no water, no power, no internet. We both were having to work and the kids were going to be out of school for a while. And I remember telling the kids like, okay, we're going to pack up. We're going to go down and stay with some friends, a couple hours away. And Ella Ray said, what? We can't leave our community.
Yeah.
She felt very like, we're in this together. We can do this. Our neighborhood has come together. We'll be fine. We need to stay. And it was interesting to me that was her reaction. But I think that in a broader sense, there's that same view from folks of like, we don't want to leave this town right now. Like we went through this terrible thing. We're coming together to get through it. And we don't want to just abandon that. And I think a lot of the people who like us went away for a week or two when it was still pretty bad are now back. But I do think, our kids have said, oh yeah, so-and-so in class moved away and they're not coming back,
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I definitely think that there's a lot of families who have chosen for various reasons, whether your house was damaged and you didn't have insurance and you realize it's just not going to make sense to rebuild here.
What are you going to do?
Asheville before all this was a very expensive place to live. I think there's a lot of people in the tourism industry who, restaurants are still not back open. And it has been
or they're like
a month
open,
and a half.
like hybrid. It's funny.
Yeah.
You're reminding me. So we were at our house cleaning up and River was like, well, as long as we're in our neighborhood, can we go to our favorite pizza place? And I was like, let me call them just to make sure they're open. And they were like doing takeout only and they had limited hours. This is, 5 weeks after this storm. So I can't imagine the financial hit that they have taken.
Gosh.
And
if you're a server whose restaurant is closed indefinitely, what are you doing? Leave. You have to leave.
Yeah.
What else do you do? Where do you get money?
Right.
They're doing some loans and grants and disaster relief funding where they can, but that's not going to make you whole, And
it is interesting, like the Asheville's tourism authority is saying like, hey, let's welcome back some people. Let's welcome back those tourists. Like we need tourism for the economy. But I do think I was having this conversation with friends over the weekend. It's really tricky. How do you encourage folks to come here when you can't drink the water and all of the restaurants, many of the restaurants that you want to visit have limited hours, limited menu items. I don't say that to discourage anyone, but I do think it's like a little bit of I don't know.
Conundrum.
What do you do?
Yeah.
The Biltmore did open back up this weekend with their their big Christmas displays, which I thought was, great. That's what we need. We need people to come back just because it's such a huge part of our economy.
You've still got displaced families living in hotels.
I know it.
Like, where are these people going to stay?
I know it.
I don't know. We were downtown this past weekend and I was shocked at how few restaurants were open.
Yeah.
Very few. Yeah, but I think this author in this article specifically is talking about kind of just that realization that despite all of this, we're going to stick it out. We're going to stay here. And I do really hope that kind of selfishly, right? Because I want my friends to stay, my kids' friends to stay. But I hope that families choose to kind of reinvest in Asheville and get through this together because otherwise, I don't know what Asheville looks like, right? If so many people leave, I just don't know how that changes the city, the community. And I'm sure that there is this sense of coming together after a natural disaster, wherever it happens. But I do, and maybe it's just because this is the first time I've gone through this, I do feel like the generosity, the kindness has been unbelievable. Just overwhelming how, much we're seeing neighbors helping neighbors and organizations from out of state and here in Western North Carolina, statewide, just all of these people coming out to help. And it is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. 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 And I think I'm hopeful that for some of these people, maybe they go away and come back once Asheville is more whole.
Yeah. The water is, I think, the biggest issue
It's
now,
a huge
of course.
challenge. Yeah.
It's funny. We have, our big camping jug that we fill, and we're lucky we have a water truck at a church very close to our house where we fill up all of our water bottles in our big jug. But I mean, I filled everything up on Friday, and yesterday we ran out again.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow. And then, Gregory's like, I mean, it's 6 people drinking water. Like, we go through a lot of water in this house, and it is unbelievable how now, like, filling up all the water things is like and the kids are even like, just mom and dad, like, we can get water at school. Like, you don't have to save the water you would give us in our water bottles for like the family to drink at dinner to not like, it's just crazy conversations.
I know. Well, I dropped River off at a play date on Saturday, and it was like a play date that kind of like happened pretty spontaneously. So it wasn't something that I've been planning for. And when I dropped her off, I was like, oh gosh, I said to the parents, like, I didn't bring a water bottle for her. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. But that's like, they either boiled, it's whatever it was, however they gave her water, it was precious time spent doing it. And as you're saying this, I'm like reminding myself, like, maybe we really don't move back into so at our rental, we have drinkable water, by the way. So that is like the big difference. We are just a little bit south of Asheville, an area that was not hit as hard. And so that, as I'm hearing you like tell these stories, I'm like, oh, I don't know if we're up for a utility sink, a plywood like wall, and the like foraging for water every day.
I mean, even, we're fortunate because Sam kind of can take a shower, right? I mean, he's not a bitty baby, but like moms with small babies, bathing them, like, because we've just had to be like, no baths, right? Because
kids are kids. Yeah.
Kids are kids.
Drink the water.
Right.
Somehow, some way it'll find its
way. So now
way.
Sam is like all of a sudden been thrust into like shower life, which he's okay. He's, 2, he's fine. But I do think about, I mean, if he was a year younger, this would be a real, like, even bathing would be a real thing. Like, fortunately, all of our other kids are old enough where showers are fine. But it's.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So listen, this is like semi-storm related-ish, but I have a little something I think could help some other folks, especially as the holidays are getting to be upon us. When this hit and we were evacuating, and of course, right away didn't have power or internet for a while, obviously. My mom sent us a Tony's box. Do you know about these?
No, what's a Tony's box? You always have all these like kid craft boxes.
This is not a craft, but this is it's a little box that's essentially a speaker.
Okay.
But it has these little you buy the Tonys, what they're called, characters that the kids can put them on top of the box, and it plays songs, music, tells stories.
Okay.
They can control the volume. It's very kid friendly, very easy to use. And so like we just got Moana. So it goes through all the Moana songs, and then it tells the Moana story. But you can get them for any Disney, anything you could possibly imagine. You can also create your own with like specific things. She also sent us a set that was like cool jobs. So like, what does it mean? How do you become a doctor? And like, who are famous doctors? So the older kids love those. What about a news anchor?
Is that one of them?
Was not one of the options.
Shoot, okay.
But anyway, so I will say it's a little bit pricey. I think it's like $100 for the box, and then each of the Tonys, they range in price, but like $15 bucks. So I think if you were buying a lot, it could get pricey, but our kids have absolutely loved it. And for those days when we were back home and didn't yet have internet and had no way to play music or do any of those things, watch TV, it was wonderful because you just plug it in and go, and the kids can do it themselves, which is really nice for me because they're always like, Mom, play Disney blah, blah, blah song. And now I can just say, go
find your Tony.
Go find your Tony and do it yourself.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for something like that, I do think it's more a little bit geared toward younger kids. But like I said, there's some other things for the older kids as well.
And Christmas is coming. That's what I like is you need like, if you need like a gift idea.
You can plug it in, and then it does have a spot where you could plug in headphones if you need
If you don't want to hear the Tonys.
Right. But we just let ours,
You just let the Tonys fly.
Yeah. They're just all throughout the house. All right. So the second article today is from Scary Mommy. This is a big one. How to discuss politics with your kids and their friends. Obviously, as we record this, we are the day before election
That's
day.
right. So the election has not. Let's timestamp this. Yes, this is the Monday before Election Day. This episode drops the Wednesday after Election Day. So we're living we're living an oblivious life.
But I will
now.
say, I think that this conversation and this topic will reign true for many weeks and months ahead because no matter what happens, there will be these conversations. But this article talks about a mom. Her daughter is 10, which I can relate to since Ella is 9. And she has this kind of core group of friends and they hang out together. And one of the friends asked the mom, "Who are you voting for?" And she kind of had this moment where she was trying to figure out how to respond. And she talks about how I very strongly feel this. She wants to be a mom who not only her kids, but her kids' friends can talk openly with. She wants to be one of those moms that can have hard conversations, that nothing's off limits, right? And I think for a lot of us growing up, that wasn't necessarily the way it was with our parents as much. So she wants to have this kind of open line of communication with her kids and their friends. But she also realizes that particularly this election, but I think, it certainly was the case previously as well. It's tricky, right? Because you don't want to say something that's going to offend your kids' friends and
I think honestly, more specifically, their parents, right?
Yes,
like you don't want it to get back. Like, let's just cut to the chase. Your worst nightmare is that Jimmy goes home to his parents and is like, well, Miss Katie said X, Y, Z, and then the parents are
about this candidate,
and then the parents are offended and think that you're trying to push your political views on their kid. That's right. That's the big concern.
Yeah, you don't want to be too pushy, but you also want to be open, and you don't want to say, "Oh, we don't talk about that,"
right?
Or
because then it just makes it like
weirder.
Taboo. Yeah, like it's I think. I mean,
so she talks to some experts about kind of what is this, and one of the people, which I thought was a good point, said, really when we think about this, we have to think about what is the goal in sharing. Why are we sharing this information? And this mom kind of came to the conclusion finally that she said who she was voting for, and that was it, and they kind of moved on. And she didn't feel like it was her place to go into the whys or the reasons, but just look, this is who I'm voting for. And I've been struggling with this a little bit with my kids just because it is hard to know. And they are curious and they want to know. And when we had that therapist on a couple of episodes ago talking about the storm devastation and how to talk to your kids about that, she made a good point that I think is applicable in many areas of parenthood, is that they're curious. They want to know. And just shutting them down and not answering is way more scary than being vague or, and I was thinking about that when my kids are asking me, well, who are we voting? Who are you voting for? Why do people think this about this person and this about this person? And, they're aware now of the candidates and they see the signs and they see the commercials and the ads and, kids are not, shielded from all of this. So I've been trying really hard to say, this is how mommy and daddy feel. This is our thoughts, but also like we have to be very aware that everybody can do what they want. You vote for somebody based on what your beliefs are and who you think would do a great job for the country, those types of things. So yeah, it's tricky though, because you do have that hesitation of they're going to come home from school and say, well, so-and-so said, their parents said, da-da-da-da-da,
right.
And how could we be voting for this person if they're this,
Yeah. This writer basically says kind of the same thing, just what you said, like kids, I always say we don't give kids enough credit because they're definitely smarter than what we think. So they are hearing all of this stuff, they're seeing the signs, and she says, it's not just the actual information about an election kids are looking for. They're watching us to learn how to handle themselves at recess, at sleepovers, at school. How should they talk about elections? When somebody asks them in the future who they're voting for, they're going to be able to reflect back to see how how did you handle that? And I mean, yeah, I think You can't just tell a kid like, well, I mean, literally, if your kid's friend came up to you and was like, who are you voting for? Are you just going to be like, oh, I can't tell you? That's weird, right?
But I think that
That's weird.
I agree, but I do think that back in the day that happened. Like, I think, like, you know, when we were growing up, I don't remember any of my friends' parents talking about this openly.
Well, I don't
or
think it
having
was
those
so.
discussions.
I don't know. I can't because I don't remember either way. But I don't think things were so hot and politicized back
for
then.
sure.
It was not that much of a
deal.
Yes. Like
Mhm,
I'm not even
mhm.
sure as a kid, like surely you had some questions, but it wouldn't be like it was.
Mhm.
It couldn't have been like that to like,
No,
like
I
what it
definitely
is like
think it's
today.
changed.
Yeah, like I just think, you know, tell your kids' friends who you're voting for, and then maybe you leave it at that, right?
Right,
That you
yeah.
don't need to go into
Right,
a
because
soliloquy
Everybody
about
has their own opinions,
Yeah.
and you just say, this is who our family's choosing. Like, you
And
know.
again, you mentioned this, but I think this is great. And honestly, I think this applies to a lot of things in life, not just this specific instance. Before you answer, ask yourself, what is your goal for sharing this? That's a good gauge for a lot of things. Before I open my mouth, why am I sharing this? Because if it's to stir things up, to make somebody feel bad, like if you find that your underlying motivation is not good for anything, maybe don't say it.
Well,
This
it's
should be a
funny.
bumper sticker.
Yeah. So I took the 3 big kids to vote early with me, and Ellery had a little notepad, and I'm like,
of course she did.
she's taking notes, and I look at it after, and she says, you know, long line, civic duty though, you know, like it's like the like
Yeah.
and then approximately 12 people crowded inside very tiny room. Booths where people are voting, casting their ballots, you know, just like describe the whole thing. And then, so she's, as we're waiting, because it was kind of a long line. And then we get into the booth and I start, you know, voting. And I mean, our ballot was 4 pages, right? So I start voting and I go to the next page. Mom, wait, I haven't recorded everyone we voted for yet.
Oh, you're like, girl.
And I'm like, oh no, honey, no, we don't need to write down every single part.
We're
Like
good.
you can hit the highlights, like if you want to
You're
write down
good.
like president and governor
Yeah.
and like, but no, not it was so funny though, because she really wanted to sit there and write down
Yeah.
every single
Get
person
that girl a
I voted
sample
for.
ballot.
I know. I need to just like
Yeah.
print it
Those
off.
exist. Yeah.
Anyway, but it was funny. It was a very clear indication though, just how interested
Yeah.
she is in it. And they're obviously talking about it at school in the
Right.
older grades. And yeah.
I waited in line so long to vote. We have early voting here in North Carolina.
Ours is maybe a half hour.
Oh, no.
Yours
I
was
was in
longer?
an hour.
Mm.
And the guy in front of me talked my face off. I was like, is this purgatory? Like, what is happening? I mean, I was thrilled to see so many people coming out to vote, but I was also like, this is just a lot. That was like a test of my mental will, you know?
Well,
do you really want to vote? Let's see. Will you stand in line for an hour with a guy that talks your face off, you know?
I did, as I was standing there with 3 of my children and I realized it was going to take a while. I was like, this may have not been a good idea.
Right. I know. That's what I was
But-
thinking. I was like, oh my gosh, if I would have taken River, I don't know. I mean,
we played a lot of I Spy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Our third article sort of cracks me up. It's from PSY Post, and the title is Parenting Style Experienced in Childhood Might Influence How People Treat Their Dogs. Which, so basically, the gist of this article is however you were treated in childhood will influence how you treat your pets. And sometimes it backfires, according to this article. So, but some of this stuff is exactly what you would guess. If you experience permissive parenting in childhood, you're more likely to use that same style with your dog. But also in this article, it talks about how if your parents were particularly harsh or you have some like grudge, you may, and this is funny because we find this in the same articles where we talk about how people were treated, how they treat their kids. They go the opposite direction. If they have a grievance with something in their childhood, they go like the extreme opposite with how they raise their kids. So there you have it, in case you were ever wondering.
Yeah. I was trying to think about this with our dog. I think as with children, we just got lucky with our dog. I don't think we necessarily parented our dog one way or the other. We just happened upon a good dog. But I see this with others, they just let their dog do whatever they want and they have a terrible dog.
Oh, really?
You
I feel like,
know?
is that not me, right? You're not talking about us?
Yes. Annie is awful. No, I'm just kidding. No,
Actually-
but you do see that. Like you see, dogs who, just aren't well behaved. And you think, well, is it just not as good of a dog or did they?
We have a saying in our house that we try to remember because the same thing has come up. And listen, we're like animal pet people. No one loves your dog as much as you love your dog. It's just a good reminder, right? Because, you will let your dog do whatever because you love them and it's your dog. This might apply to your children as well. But other people are like, no, I don't like your dog so much that I want them to jump all over me, And actually, I just will say this. Annie is a hound dog and she is sometimes not that well behaved, if I'm being totally honest.
I think she's great.
I mean, she will steal any food off the counter.
Oh, that is true.
Anywhere, everywhere. And she has been like this. Annie is, we did the calculations. We've had her for 12 years. And we got her as an adult. So she's like, and she's like a big dog. So she's old. She's like an old lady, but like she turns into like a 20-year-old, like a spry teenager whenever there's food.
She can get some food from crazy places.
Right. Over the years, we have tried to break her of the habit. And I don't know if it's like an instinct. So at this point, Brian and I are just like, every time we go someplace, we're like, just put that food. You got to put the food up. The food's got to go up just because we've learned. And I'm sure that people are like that. Katie and Brian, like, why don't they train their dog? We've tried, okay?
There's a specific dog in our neighborhood that barks incessantly.
Oh, no.
Incessantly.
Is that a breed thing too, though? Like, how do you keep your dog from barking?
But the owner is so sweet, but is like,
she's so blasé about it, and you're like, yo, your dog's killing me.
Wow. I mean, at the kids, like kind of aggressive sounding at the kids, and I'm like, oh, like this is not fun for anybody in the neighborhood.
Nobody loves your dog. Do you want me to like slip
another
a note
bumper sticker?
Yeah. Is this like, do you want me to slip a note in their mailbox?
Oh.
Nobody loves your dog as much as you love your dog.
Signed, Anonymous. Do you have a win for us?
Yeah, but I do have a win, but we kind of talked about it at the top of the show. Listen, I am feeling...
Your house?
Yes. I'm feeling slightly more optimistic about the house situation. It's just, I got to tell you, sometimes I go there and I am like, our mutual, Karen and I have, our neighbors are mutual friends. So the neighbor came over yesterday and he was like, wow, look, you guys looking good. And I was like, really, Tom? That's how like low the bar is like you were like loving this like plywood wall here in this kitchen. He's like, well, but like sometimes I go there and I'm like, and we all agreed yesterday, like it's going to be at least a year before this neighborhood, this street, our yards, both of our yards were impacted. We sort of share a yard with these people. Like it's going to be a really long time before any of this like looks normal again. And it's like, I'm slowly, not much about the house has changed, but I have changed. I'm trying to change and just be like, this is,
a phase.
Yeah, this is a phase. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And like, I just have got to go. We're kind of, like I said, we're having this internal debate at our house. Like, should we move back to North? Like, what is more painful, the really long drive to and from school and the extracurriculars, or, like living with a utility sink and a plywood wall and a makeshift stair? Like, what's more hard? So we'll keep you posted on that. Like I said, it's especially as the holidays are coming up.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? What do you do? Like, do you want to be in your own home and put your Christmas decorations up? Like, do you want to are you going to forgo that this year? Anyway.
I thought your win was going to be your amazing Halloween trick-or-treating buddies.
Oh my gosh. That should be right. We had the best time trick-or-treating last week. We did. We had a really good time. Yeah.
Not to like force you into a second win.
Okay, so this is my second win. Really, this is my first
What I meant to say was.
Yeah, what a great little Halloween we had.
We had a great Halloween. We trick-or-treated together. The kids had a blast. Yeah. Our kids are still talking about Brian's Halloween makeup
Guys,
skills.
he went all in, and he was actively annoyed with me because Karen was there. Went over to their house to pregame, if you will. And by pregame, I
Halloween.
mean we ate English muffin pizzas. It was but anyway, he was annoyed with me because I wasn't getting his he had a very specific image of how he wanted it to look.
His face makeup. I've never seen a grown man apply face makeup.
And I was
that.
yeah, why don't you just take over? And he was like, thank you. And did it. And I was like, oh.
Well, don't worry. Now the kids are Sam is I want to be Jack Skellington next year. And can Mr. Brian do my makeup?
Absolutely.
I was like, wow.
Sign
Okay. We're
him up.
already planning this out.
Sign him up.
It's lots of discussion, but it was fun. It was one of those in the midst of all of this brief little moment of joy.
It was
and
great.
Fun night.
It was finally a chance of a little bit of normalcy.
Yeah. Well, we hope everyone out there is doing well. Don't forget that you can, if you are into this, watch us on YouTube.
Watch us on YouTube.
It's
so you go to the WLOS News 13 YouTube page and then click on the podcast. It'll pop right up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Or if you're just a good old-fashioned listener, you can just keep right on doing
Those
that.
old-fashioned listeners.
I don't know. But we hope everyone has a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys. Anchor Moms is a Sinclair podcast produced out of WLOS in Asheville. We're your hosts, Katie Killen and Karen Zakalak. Anchor Moms is edited by Matthew Yates.
For more information on the topics discussed in this episode and to stay up to date on future episodes, follow us on Instagram @AnchorMoms.
You can follow Anchor Moms on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Know a parent who could benefit from this week's Anchor Moms episode? Your recommendations help our show to grow, so spread the word.